Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Three years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma. I was 28 at the time, just starting to feel like I had my life figured out. I had a decent job at an accounting firm, a small apartment I loved, and plans for the future. Then everything changed overnight. The treatment was brutal. Months of chemotherapy that left me exhausted, nauseous, and yes, very thin. I lost over 40 pounds during those months. My hair fell out, my skin looked gray, and I barely recognized myself in the mirror. But I fought through it because I had to. My late grandfather, who served in the Marines during World War II, always told me that giving up wasn't an option. He passed away when I was 15, but his words stuck with me through everything. After 18 months of treatment, I finally got the all clear. The cancer was gone, but my body never quite bounced back the same way. I'm still thin, probably thinner than I should be, but I'm healthy. My doctors say I'm doing great, and that's what matters. I've learned to live with the stares and comments about my weight, though they still sting sometimes. Yesterday I was at the grocery store doing my weekly shopping. I always take my time in the sparkling water aisle because there are so many flavors to choose from, and it's one of the few things that still tastes good to me after all the treatment. I was reading the labels on some new lime-flavored bottles when this older man approached me. He was wearing a Marine Corps hat and looked to be in his 70s. At first I thought maybe he needed help reaching something on a high shelf, so I smiled and waited for him to speak. The man asked me what my secret was. When I looked confused and asked him what he meant, he said he wanted to know my secret to staying so skinny. My stomach dropped. Here we go again, I thought. People always assume I'm on some special diet or exercise routine. They never consider that maybe there's a medical reason, or that commenting on someone's body isn't appropriate. I asked him what secret he was referring to exactly. He told me not to be modest and said I was tiny. He bet that I didn't eat carbs or something like that and mentioned that his wife had been trying to lose weight for years. Other shoppers started to look our way. This man was speaking loudly and gesturing at my body like I was some kind of exhibit. I wanted to walk away, but something about his tone made me angry. He seemed so entitled to an explanation, like I owed him my personal information just because he asked. I asked him if he really wanted to know. He said absolutely and told me to share the wealth. He was grinning now, probably thinking he was about to get some magic weight loss tip he could take home to his wife. I looked him straight in the eye and decided to tell him the truth. I told him I was a cancer survivor. The change in his expression was immediate. His smile disappeared and he actually took a step back. For a moment, I thought he might apologize and walk away, which would have been the normal response. But then something unexpected happened. He put down his case of sparkling water and opened his arms wide. With tears forming in his eyes, he told me that he had lost his mother to cancer the previous year. Now it was my turn to be surprised. I could see the genuine emotion in his face. And suddenly, this wasn't about my weight anymore. This was about loss and survival, and the shared experience of watching cancer affect someone you care about. I let my guard down and accepted his hug. It felt genuine, full of understanding that I hadn't expected from a stranger in a grocery store. After we separated, I told him I was sorry for his loss and thanked him for his service, mentioning that my grandfather had been a Marine too. He thanked me for saying that and congratulated me on beating cancer. He told me I was stronger than I knew. We separated, and he picked up his water again. There was a moment of awkward silence where neither of us knew quite what to say next. He said that he should probably mind his own business more often. I agreed that would be nice. He nodded, looking embarrassed now, and said he would remember that. He told me to take care of myself, and I told him the same. He walked away, and I continued my shopping. But I kept thinking about the interaction. Part of me was still annoyed that he felt comfortable commenting on my body in the first place. That's never okay, regardless of his intentions or the outcome. But another part of me was touched by his vulnerability when he shared about his mother. I think what bothered me most was how entitled he felt to an explanation, like my appearance was somehow his business or that I should be flattered by his attention. People don't realize how many cancer survivors deal with comments about their weight, their hair, their energy levels. We're not walking inspiration stories or cautionary tales. We're just people trying to live our lives. When I got home, I told my roommate about what happened. She was furious on my behalf, especially about the initial comment, but she also thought it was interesting how the conversation evolved. I guess it shows that people are complicated, and sometimes the worst interactions can lead to unexpected moments of human connection. Still, I hope that man thinks twice before commenting on someone else's body, because next time the person might not be as willing to share their story, and they shouldn't have to. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. His mother has always been what I'd call involved in our lives, but I thought it was just because she cared. She'd drop by unannounced, rearrange things in our kitchen when she visited, and always had opinions about how we should do things. My husband would just shrug and say, "That's how she's always been." When we announced I was pregnant, she immediately started making plans. Not suggestions, plans. She wanted to throw the baby shower at her house, pick out the nursery theme, and even suggested names. I tried to be patient because I figured she was just excited about her first grandchild. But then we got to discussing the birth plan. I'm a pretty private person, and the idea of giving birth already made me nervous. I knew I only wanted 2 people in that delivery room with me, my husband, and my mom. That was it. No exceptions, no negotiations. When I mentioned this to my mother-in-law during a family dinner, she stopped eating mid-bite. She asked what I meant by only 2 people. I explained that I just wanted it to be intimate with my husband and my mom. She immediately said that as a grandmother, she should be there too. My husband tried to support me by telling his mother that it was really up to me who I wanted there. But she got more upset and said this was her grandchild we were talking about. She claimed she had the right to be there when her grandchild was born. I felt my stomach drop. The way she said right like it was some kind of legal entitlement really bothered me. I told her I understood she was excited, but this was my body and my medical procedure, and I needed to feel comfortable. She argued that she had given birth to 3 children and knew exactly what I was going through. She insisted I needed family support. I explained that she was family and would meet the baby right after, but during the actual birth, I only wanted my husband and mom there. She went quiet for the rest of dinner, but I could tell she wasn't done with this conversation. Over the next few weeks, she brought it up constantly. She called my husband at work to complain about being excluded. She told his siblings that I was trying to cut her out of her grandchild's life. She even called my own mother to try to convince her to talk me into changing my mind. My mom called me after that conversation. She told me that my mother-in-law had called her that day wanting her to convince me to let her in the delivery room. She said it wasn't fair that my mom got to be there, but she didn't. I asked what my mom told her, and she said she explained that I was an adult who could make my own decisions about my own body. The closer I got to my due date, the more intense she became. She started showing up at our house with baby clothes and supplies, always mentioning how she hoped she'd be able to see her grandchild being born like a real grandmother should. 2 weeks before my due date, we had the final conversation about it. She said she'd been thinking and really thought I should reconsider about the delivery room. I told her we'd already discussed this and my decision hadn't changed. She insisted again that it was her grandchild and she had the right to be there. I told her that she didn't have rights to my medical procedure and this was my body. She called me cruel and selfish, saying she was family. My husband told his mother she needed to respect our decision. She said she couldn't believe he was taking my side over his own mother. She stormed out. When I went into labor at 2 in the morning, we called my mom and headed to the hospital. The labor was progressing quickly, and within a few hours, I was ready to start pushing. My husband was holding my hand, my mom was coaching me through contractions, and everything was going exactly as I'd hoped. Then a nurse came into the room looking confused. She said there was a woman outside claiming to be family who said she needed to be in here for the birth. My husband and I looked at each other in shock. I asked what woman, and the nurse explained that she said she was the grandmother. She was with a security officer and claimed the patient was confused and actually wanted her present. Between contractions, I managed to tell the nurse that I didn't want her here and had specifically told her she couldn't be here. The nurse said she'd handle this. The nurse left, and I could hear voices getting louder in the hallway. Then my phone started buzzing. My husband checked it and said it was his mom calling. I told him not to answer it and to focus on me right now, but the calls kept coming. Every few minutes, his phone would buzz again. Meanwhile, I was trying to focus on pushing and bringing our baby into the world. The nurse came back in and told us she had told my mother-in-law she needed to leave. She said she was arguing with security now, saying she had rights as the grandmother. My mom asked if they could just ban her from the floor, and the nurse said they were working on it. We could hear the nurse telling her that if she didn't leave voluntarily, they'd escort her out. I could hear my mother-in-law's voice getting shriller in the hallway. She was yelling about discrimination and insisting she was the grandmother with every right to be here. The security officer told her she needed to leave the premises now. She threatened to call her lawyer about this. Finally, it got quiet in the hallway. But my husband's phone kept buzzing. He checked it again and said she had called 43 times in the last 2 hours. I told him to put it on silent because our baby was about to be born. He turned off his phone just as I gave the final push. Our beautiful daughter was born 20 minutes later. The room was peaceful, exactly as I'd imagined it. My mom was crying, my husband was crying, and I was holding our perfect little girl. The nurse came back in after we'd had some time to bond. She asked how we were doing, and I said perfect. I asked if my mother-in-law was gone, and the nurse confirmed that security had escorted her off the property. She said she was making quite a scene in the lobby about her rights as a grandmother. My mom said she couldn't believe she actually brought security to try to force her way in. My husband apologized about his mother and said this wasn't how he wanted the day to go. I told him he had nothing to apologize for. He chose to be here with me instead of dealing with her drama, and that was all that mattered. We spent 2 wonderful days in the hospital with just our little family and my mom. The nurses were amazing and made sure we had privacy. My husband's phone had over 60 missed calls from his mother by the time we checked it. When we got home, there were flowers on our doorstep with a card that said, "For my granddaughter that I wasn't allowed to meet properly." We brought the flowers inside but threw away the card. That was 3 weeks ago, and we haven't heard from her since. No calls, no visits, no attempts to meet the baby. My husband tried calling her once to see if she wanted to apologize and meet her granddaughter, but she hung up on him. My husband said he couldn't believe she was choosing to miss out on knowing our daughter because she didn't get her way about the delivery room. I told him that was her choice. We set a reasonable boundary, and she couldn't respect it. It's been the most peaceful postpartum recovery I could have asked for. No unexpected visits, no criticism of how I'm feeding the baby or how often she's sleeping. No one trying to take the baby from me when I'm bonding with her. Just me, my husband, and our daughter learning to be a family. Some people have asked if I feel bad about keeping a grandmother from her grandchild. But here's the thing, I didn't keep her from anything. I set a boundary about my own medical procedure, and she chose to blow up our relationship rather than respect it. She could have waited 2 hours to meet the baby after birth, like every other extended family member does. Instead, she chose to create a scene at the hospital and hasn't spoken to us since. I'm not losing sleep over it. My daughter will grow up knowing that her parents will protect her and set appropriate boundaries, even with family members who think their wants override other people's rights. And if my mother-in-law ever decides to apologize and respect our boundaries, she'll be welcome to have a relationship with her granddaughter. But until then, we're doing just fine without the drama. My name doesn't matter for this story, but what does matter is that I am the youngest of 3 kids. My older brother moved across the country years ago and barely keeps in touch. Then there's my sister, let's call her Karen, who's always been the golden child in her own mind. Karen was the type of person who thought the world owed her everything. She dropped out of college twice, bounced from job to job, and always had some excuse for why nothing was ever her fault. Meanwhile, I worked my way through nursing school and started taking care of our aging mother when her health began declining. Mom had been living alone in the family house for years after Dad passed. When her dementia got worse, I moved in to help her with daily tasks. I did her shopping, managed her medications, drove her to doctor appointments, and basically became her full-time caregiver. Karen would show up maybe once a month, usually asking for money. When Mom's condition deteriorated to the point where she needed round-the-clock care, I arranged for professional help during the day while I worked my shifts at the hospital. Karen complained that I was wasting Mom's money on caregivers, but she never offered to help with the actual caregiving. The real problem started when Mom updated her will. She decided to leave the house and most of her savings to me, with smaller amounts going to Karen and our brother. Mom's reasoning was simple. I was the one who had sacrificed to take care of her, and she wanted to make sure I was compensated for everything I'd done. Karen found out about the will change when Mom accidentally mentioned it during one of her rare visits. That's when everything went sideways. Karen started showing up at the house constantly, arguing with Mom about the will. She'd scream about how unfair it was, how she deserved an equal share, and how I had manipulated Mom into changing it. These fights were putting enormous stress on Mom, whose dementia made her easily confused and upset. I tried talking to Karen about it, but she wasn't having it. I told her she needed to stop upsetting Mom with these arguments about money. Karen shot back that Mom was her mother too, and she had every right to discuss this with her. I explained that Mom had dementia, and these fights were making her condition worse. Karen accused me of trying to keep her away so I could steal everything. The situation escalated over several weeks. Karen would show up unannounced, sometimes bringing friends or her boyfriend to witness conversations where she tried to pressure Mom into changing the will back. When I'd ask them to leave, Karen would accuse me of isolating Mom. Things came to a head on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work when I got a frantic call from Mom's daytime caregiver. She told me I needed to come home right away because my sister was there yelling at my mother, and she thought Karen might get physical. I rushed home to find Karen in the living room screaming at Mom, who was cowering in her wheelchair looking terrified. Karen was demanding that Mom change the will right now and threatening to call a lawyer to fix this today. Mom looked confused and scared, begging Karen to please stop yelling. I told Karen she needed to leave immediately. She refused, claiming it was her mother's house too, and she wasn't going anywhere. That's when I noticed that Mom had bruises on her arm. Fresh ones. I asked Karen if she had grabbed Mom. She admitted that Mom was being stubborn and someone needed to make her listen. I immediately called the police. Karen tried to leave when she heard me on the phone, but I blocked the door. I told her she wasn't going anywhere until the cops arrived. Karen screamed that I couldn't keep her there and that this was kidnapping. I explained that she had assaulted an elderly woman with dementia and she was staying put. The police arrived within minutes. They took photos of Mom's bruises and arrested Karen for elder abuse. Mom was so shaken up that I had to take her to the emergency room to get checked out. Over the next few months, the case moved through the court system. Karen hired a lawyer who tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd only grabbed Mom's arm to get her attention. But the bruises told a different story, and the caregiver was a witness to Karen's aggressive behavior. Karen also tried to contest the will during this time, claiming I had unduly influenced Mom. But Mom's lawyer had been careful to document her mental state when she made the changes, and multiple witnesses could testify that it was her decision. Finally, we got to sentencing day. I sat in the gallery with Mom's caregiver and a few family friends who had supported us through this ordeal. Karen sat at the defendant's table looking smug, like she still thought she was going to walk away from this. The judge reviewed the case and the evidence. He said this was a troubling case of elder abuse, explaining that the victim was a vulnerable adult with dementia and the defendant was her own daughter. He noted that the evidence clearly showed a pattern of harassment and intimidation that ended in physical assault. Karen's lawyer stood up to make a plea for leniency, but the judge wasn't having it. He said that, given the vulnerability of the victim and the defendant's complete lack of remorse, he was sentencing her to 18 months in state prison. That's when Karen lost it completely. She started shouting that this was all lies and that she never hurt her mother. The judge told her she needed to control herself, but Karen kept screaming. She blamed me for everything, claiming I had poisoned our mother against her and stolen her inheritance. The bailiff started moving toward Karen's table, but she was already standing up and pointing at me. She yelled that I had ruined her life and she was going to make me pay for this. Then she completely snapped. Karen started climbing over the defendant's table, clearly intending to charge at the judge's bench. The bailiffs shouted warnings for her to stop and get back, but she kept going. She screamed that she wasn't going to prison because of these lies. That's when one of the bailiffs pulled out his taser. There was a loud pop, and Karen went down like a sack of potatoes, twitching on the floor. The courtroom erupted in chaos with people gasping and the judge banging his gavel. The judge ordered everyone out of the courtroom except essential personnel. When we were escorted out, I could see Karen being handcuffed while she was still dazed from the taser. They ended up adding charges for contempt of court and attempting to assault a judge. 6 months later, Karen is still in prison. Her sentence got extended because of the courtroom incident, and she's been denied parole twice for refusing to take responsibility for her actions. Mom passed away peacefully last month, surrounded by people who actually cared about her. The house is officially mine now, and I've turned Mom's old room into a memorial space with her favorite photos and belongings. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.